Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, thanks for coming out tonight. This kind of reminds me of last year's 500. I promise we won't kick you out of the seats, though, if you were at the race last year. My name is Marsh Davis, president of Indiana Landmarks, and I'm pleased to welcome you tonight to the Talking Track with Dave Wilson and Al Unser Jr. In my time here, I've been privileged to also serve as board member of Indiana Automotive, an affinity group of Indiana Landmarks, and the host of tonight's program. I'm introducing the program on behalf of Indiana Automotive Chair Jason Van Sickle, who is the Vice President of Curation and Education at the newly transformed and just opened Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. You can imagine that Jason is kind of busy this week, and he was not able to be with us tonight. We were founded in 2014 by Indiana Landmarks members. Indiana Automotive celebrates Indiana's automotive heritage and promotes the preservation of Indiana's automotive landmarks. With the help of Active Volunteer Board, we award grants and host tours and events like tonight's, all of which is made possible by the expertise and the connections of our Indiana Automotive Board members. If you're an Indiana Automotive Board member, please stand or raise your hand and accept our thanks for the great work you do. Anybody here? Charlie? Thank you. We also give special thanks this evening to board member Barb Hellier for arranging tonight's program. Barb's extraordinary and longtime friendships, connections, and knowledge about the people and places of racing are invaluable to Indiana Automotive and to the whole racing community. Let's hear it for Barb. There she is, Barb Hellier. Indiana Automotive is just one of the many programs at Indiana Landmarks that focus on saving Indiana's meaningful places. Formed in 1960, we are a statewide historic preservation nonprofit powered by over 6,000 members. If you're not a member, please consider joining us. You'll receive bi-monthly magazine, Indiana Preservation, as well as discounts and first notices of events and tours, events such as this tonight. It's easy. Go to indianalandmarks.org or fill out a membership brochure available in the lobby. I promise you will not regret it. Please join us if you will. And now we turn to our main program with a quick reminder to attendees. We will reserve a brief time at the end for questions and answers. For those who are tuning in by Zoom, look for the question and answer box on your screen. We'll try to take as many questions as time allows, but please forgive us in advance if we can't get to all of your comments and questions. And for those of you here, just a quick reminder to don't forget to silence those cell phones. In the past, Talking Track has welcomed legends Donald Davidson, Sarah Fisher, Scott Goodyear, Spike Gelhausen, Johnny Parsons Jr., Mark Miles, Doug Bowles, and Paul Page. Tonight, we add Dave the King Wilson and Al Unser Jr. to that esteemed list. Indiana radio personality Dave Wilson was a Speedway native and longtime Indy 500 fan. He served as commentator on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway network from 2003 to 2020, though fans may know him best for his time on Bob and Tom Show or on WIBC's afternoon show, and his many years as a stand-up comedian appearing in venues across the country. Al Unser Jr. followed in the footsteps of his father and uncle to become a repeat champion in Indianapolis, winning the 500 in 1992 and 1994. A rookie in 1983, he was the first to compete against his own father in the same Indianapolis 500. In the 1992 race, he defeated Scott Goodyear by 0.043 seconds, the closest finish in Indy 500 history. We had Scott Goodyear here a couple of years ago, and he had some comments that may differ from the ones we hear tonight. Al Unser Jr. completed his 19th Indianapolis 500 in 2007, having logged 7 finishes of the 5th or higher positions, and currently holds the 9th place in all-time laps completed standings. Anybody know how many laps he's completed? 3,173. And if have you ever taken one of those two-seater rides around the track? I mean, going 4 laps in the back seat at 175, I can't imagine doing 3,173 laps, but congratulations. Among his more memorable achievements, Unser won the challenging Long Beach, California road race no less than 6 times, including 4 years in succession in 1998 through 1991, and his career IndyCar Series wins total 34. He was inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America in 2009. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dave Wilson and Al Unser Jr.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's go back to one of the first times we ever did something together, and it goes back to the Bob and Tom radio days. Any Bob and Tom listeners here? We're out in the Greenwood Park Mall, and we have 2 Oscar Mayer Wienermobiles.
Yep.
And it was Tom Griswold and I in one Wienermobile, and Bob Cavoyan and Al Unser Jr. in the second. And we're lined up for a drag race. Do you remember this?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I told Tom Griswold, I said, Tom, the only way we're going to beat Al Unser Jr. is we got to cheat. So the minute we're going to have a flag guy who's going to raise a flag and bring it down, I go, the minute he raises that flag, Tom, go. And he did, and we won. You remember that?
I do. They cheated.
They cheated.
Cheated.
But then you got us back the next year. They took us to the fairgrounds. We had to run on an oval, and we got smoked. So, all right, let's talk about one of the biggest things in the news, not only here in Indianapolis, but around the country and around the world, is the new museum at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been there. Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, we were fortunate enough to be invited Monday night for their opening, and it was a cocktail party and so on, and there was so many people there. I think there was over 500 people that were invited that night, and so going through there, it is truly amazing. I have a hard time finding words for it because I was so used to the old museum and so on, and now with this museum, there are so many innovative ideas to tell the stories of the museums, and you know, Dad and I had a museum in Albuquerque, the Unser Museum, and which has now relocated to Lincoln, Nebraska, with the Museum of American Speed, and so I'm so used to just a certain kinds of museums. Well, going into the IMS museum as soon as you walk in there, you start seeing all of the decades of garages, and each decade or each how can I say it? Time change with each cars and innovations with the cars and generations and so on. And you walk down that, and it gets better and better and better. And then you turn a corner and you go into a big video room that is the basically race day morning on a video that starts from the front of the room and goes on the ceiling and all the way behind you. They've got the front row cars from last year, which was the Pennzoil car, and then all Penske, McCullough, yep, and Power and Newgarden, and so actual cars right there, and so I was standing there with my mom when this video started, and so on, and with everything going on, all the kind of the festivities, they played Back Home Again in Indiana, taps, you know, really truly recreating the morning and the start of the Indy 500. And my mom looked over at me, she goes, "I've got goosebumps," which, I mean, I had them too. I looked at her and I go, "Me too." And because, and so as you go from that's just the beginning of it. And then you start going through the thing, and there's just so many different things to, that they're telling the story. You know, they've got kiosks of different generations and so on, and you just walk up and you push the button and it brings up the driver of that era and so on. And you know, we were there a little over 2 hours, and I don't think I got to see half of what was going on there. And especially Barb even told us while we were in the green room, she goes, "Well, you know, there's a third level up above." And I go, "There's a third level?" I didn't even know what, and that's all interactive with the cutout of the IndyCar, the current IndyCar, changing tires and so on, which I saw on TV. And I didn't even get to see any of that. So IMS has truly jumped way ahead of any museum that I've ever been into, that that tells the stories about the whole thing and the different eras, like as soon as you walk in there. And so yeah, it's super impressive and a must see. You have to go and see it for sure.
You brought up, and one of the things I've heard a lot of people talk about in regards to the new museum is that morning of the being on the start finish line and all the pre-race festivities. And I've had conversations with people over the year. What is your favorite part of the pre-race ceremony? And, you know, fans or media people, we are all outside our cars and everything, but what's sitting on that grid, or what's that morning like for a driver leading up to the start of the Indianapolis 500?
It's actually pretty calm, to be honest with you. Well, it used to be in my day, okay, now, so it was only probably the last 3 or 4 Indy 500s that I was actually in that they actually had driver intros.
Right.
Okay, and so most of my career, there were no driver intros. You know, when the time came, you usually walked from your garage out to the grid on the starting line and basically get in your car and go. And so that morning, the best way I can describe it is my rookie year at Indy. I go out there and my dad had already pre-warned me that, you know, the whole place is going to look totally different because all the time that you're there during testing and practice and all that kind of stuff, there's nobody in the grandstands. So the grandstands is a solid color. When you go out there race day morning, all of a sudden the grandstands are totally different. They're full of color, basically, because they're full of people. And so he warned me about that, and I go, okay, you know. And so I was kind of pre-warned about that everything's going to look different out there, and it did for sure. But for me, when I got out there and got to my car, it was the beginning of the end, finally. Okay, so we've been through 2 weeks of practice. We've been through all the sponsor events, all the interviews, trying to find speed in your car for 2 weeks. And then there's a week where the speedway goes dark. And so then you start doing all of your sponsor activities and so on and so forth. And the days that week when it goes dark, those days just kind of seem to drag on, you know. And carb day was on a Thursday, not a Friday. It was on a Thursday. And so you go out there and you do carb day, which is the last 2 hours of practice. And then Friday and then Saturday, it begins with the parade, the public drivers meeting, and then the parade, and so on. And so then Sunday finally is there, and you've been waiting a month for this race and through everything that you've been through. And so for me, it was something that I noticed when I was younger and I was coming back before I was actually racing, Dad and Uncle Bobby on race day morning, it was the calmest they had been the whole time there. And I truly believe it's finally, you get to get in the car and you finally get to go race, which you've been preparing for this whole time. And so it was really calming. It was something that, that it was finally the beginning of the end. And at the end of this day, the 500 will be over. We'll know how you did. We'll know who the winner is and all that kind of stuff. So.
Do you hear, I mean, as a driver, do you hear back home again?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You
No.
hear all that kind of stuff. And generally that's when basically when I would start to get into the car is when they were playing back home again in Indiana and so on. It was funny. There was one year I was a little bit eager to get in the car or what have you. And I got in while they were playing taps. And my crew go, Al, what are you doing? You need to wait a little bit on that. So I said, okay, but yeah.
Well, let's go and talk about 1992. That's 1992. And as was mentioned in the introduction, you won that race by 0.043, 43 hundredths of a second. To give you, obviously, there's a visual indication of how close that is, but it takes a tenth of a second to blink your eyes. Less than a half of a tenth of a second is what you were able to beat Scott Goodyear by. Tell us can you kind of give us an insight of the last couple of laps did you know he was coming up? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, we knew he was there. We knew he was there for the last 10 laps. We knew he was there. And so, in actuality, okay, to bring it even more so, my time and device that I had back then, they didn't regulate where they were supposed to be. My time and device is in my nose of my car. His time and device is in the side pod of his car, not in the nose. So timing wise with that photo, it's actually closer than the
Than the time.
0.0043. Yeah, it's actually shorter than that. And the way everybody found out, it was funny because they, Valvoline put out a contest showing this photo during the summer. And they were saying at 220 miles an hour, it looks like it's 6 or 7 feet apart. You know, is that what it is or something like that? And they had it equaling 0.043 of a second. And there was some mathematicians that actually did it, and it's actually closer. And so it was something that we found out, and that's when we really found out that where the timing devices were and all that sort of thing. But to get on with what had happened that day, with about 15 laps to go, Scott Goodyear and I, from the final stop, which was 30 laps earlier than this, we were having one heck of a race. Okay, we were so equal, and we were fighting for second, and we were so equal that whoever was in front of the other driver, whenever we came up on lap traffic and that lap traffic wrecked the momentum of the lead driver, we were able to pass each other. And that was the only way that we could actually pass each other those last 30 or 40 laps that we were racing. But no one saw it. No one knew anything about it because it was all for second place, because Michael Andretti was gone. He was gone, and he had been gone all day. He was nowhere to be found. He was that far ahead. And then just before Michael broke, we came on some lap traffic. Scott Goodyear was in front of me. It wrecked his momentum. I passed him, and 2 laps later, you hear the words, Andretti is slowing down. I had to get that in there. I I had to get that in there. Okay, so now it's for the lead. And so once Michael gets off the racetrack and they go back green, and I think it was with about 10 to 12 laps left to go. And I could not shake Scott Goodyear. I went from the time that it went green, I went wide open all the way around that racetrack the entire time. I'm trying to break the draft and all that kind of stuff going on. And he just kept getting closer and closer and closer. And of course, what I was worried about was the lap traffic. And so every lap would come off at 2 or off at turn 4, I'd look all the way down the straightaway, hoping and praying we don't come on any lap cars. Fortunately, we did not. Okay. And, but with my car, it was so neutral, so balanced that I was searching for speed all day long. And so I kept taking rear wing out of the car. And so on my final stop, I went another step on the rear wing, and it was just a little bit too far. And so I was also praying, okay, I had to be as smooth as I could because the front was nailed to the ground and the back end felt really, really light. And finally, on the last lap in turn 3, on the exit of turn 3, the back end of my car slid up next to the wall there. And I go, oh no, and as soon as I turned in, it jumped out on me. And that's the first time all I did was just blip the throttle, just like that. And that was enough that I saw on the exit of turn 4, Scott finally had a run on me that, I thought I had lost another one. In 1989, I lost 500 against Emerson, and I came off at turn 4 and I saw that big, huge run he had on me, and I went, oh no, I've lost another one. But fortunately, we were able to get to the start finish first and so on. But if it had gone one more lap, that photo right there, if that would have been the white flag lap, he had me. He would have passed me going into turn 1 and so on. It was way too close. Okay. I mean, I'm in a six spotted seat belt and my butt was not in the seat. So it was too close. Yeah.
So
We always made fun about the mirrors, how did you see it on passenger cars? The objects are closer than they appear. That was all over my mirrors. For sure.
So, and again, in one of the, I think, most memorable victory lane celebrations in the history of the Indianapolis 500, you pull into victory lane, and was it, I forget who it was interviewing you from ABC, was it
Jack Arute?
Jack Arute.
Yep.
And he could tell how emotional you were. And do you remember what you told him and how you felt?
For sure. I mean, he was mentioning, because my voice was starting to crack because, I really didn't have time to absorb the win, okay? Because I had my mirrors full of Scott Goodyear those last few laps that there was, with me growing up with the Indy 500 and all that kind of stuff, that last lap, the winner or whoever's leading that last lap, they feel every crack in the road, they hear every bolt on their car, all that kind of stuff. I had none of that at all. I was standing up on that pedal and I was just concentrate fully on Scott Goodyear. And so I didn't have any of that. And so I didn't have any thoughts of winning the race until we actually finished the race and crossed the line. And I got in through turn 1 and I honestly, by the time I got to turn 2, I just broke down mentally. I was just broken down and crying and stuff, you know. I didn't push the button and say thank you to the guys or anything like, because I was trying to gain my composure to even speak. And so all of that just was a big rush. All the times that the go-kart racing with dad and the sprint car racing and everything that it took to get to that moment just came all rushing to me. And so when I got into victory lane and started talking, it was difficult for me to talk, and because it was such a rush to me, because honestly, waking up that morning, it was just going out there to get points. I qualified 12th. I had a car that would really be really good in a hot, slippery conditions. I wake up that morning and it's the coldest day in the history of the 500. Like, what? And just there's just no way we're going to win this thing. And so we're going to go out and we're going to do the best job that we can do and get as many points and just come back next year. I mean, that's how I felt. And so winning it was just the furthest thing from my mind, totally the furthest thing. And so, Jack actually asked such an open-ended question that I forget exactly what the question was, but it was just so open-ended. And I just simply just said, you just don't know what Indy means, and that's what it was to me. It was just all of those things. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, because I think a lot of that also was because of how close I came in '89, and then there was years like my rookie year. I had a car that could actually, we qualified 5th. It was a fast race car. And just, if I'd have known what I was doing and if my team would have known what they were doing, especially me as a driver, we had a shot at winning that race, that we had a car to do it. I had a car to do it in '84. I had a car that could win the race. But then it had a water line leak and there, I think even before half distance, it was Rick Mears, Tom Sneva, and myself, and we were the only ones on the lead lap at that time. We had all lapped 4th place, okay, and before half distance. And so we were in a world of our own. And so we had a car to do it that day. But then I had a mechanical and it went away. I didn't have a car to win the race that I felt that had the speed and so on until 1989. So I went all those years, in preparation to have a car, and we just didn't have it on race day. It wasn't fast enough to go out there and win the race. And so those years went by that, you work so hard and you just don't have it on race day. It's just not there for you. And then in 1989, we did, and we were so prepared for that '89 race. It was unbelievable. We came back there and for practice, for the 2 weeks of practice, we would only run from 11 to 3 during those days of practice, and so we wouldn't do like the happy hour. We would be out there 11, because that's when the race started back then. Yep. Was at 11 o'clock, and it was usually over by 2. Okay. And so we wouldn't go past 3 o'clock during practice. With the boost knob, I had my boost knob marked and set to have the maximum boost, and then to do fuel save. We did that during the race. In 1989, I had a fast race car, but I never even showed it. Okay, and it was during the race. I think we were just past half distance, something like that, and Rick Gallus, my car owner, he called me on the radio. We were just taking it easy, just staying on the lead lap, just making sure that we were super careful. When I say taking it easy, super careful on lap traffic and just, really making sure you don't get caught up in something that's not your fault. And it allowed, Michael and Emerson were in a race for the lead. They were just running as fast as they possibly could. And they had gone around where I was 20 seconds in front of them. I was running third or fourth, something like that. And I was 20 seconds in front of them. And I had the boost turned down, and we were saving fuel. And Rick Gallows comes over the radio and he goes, "Al, they're 20 seconds behind you. Can you help us out a little bit?" And I went, "Sure." And so I turned the boost up, and within 2 or 3 laps, I opened it up to about 40 seconds, which is just basically almost a lap. And I opened it up and I pushed the radio and I go, "Okay, are you happy?" He goes, "Yes, sir, we're happy." I go, "Okay." So I'll go back to fuel saving and so on, yeah. And so 89, we were really prepared for that one. There was a yellow that fell. I made my final stop, and we were actually, before the yellow came, it was all under green. I had made my final stop, and Emerson was running in the lead at that time. And he was about, 15 to 20 seconds in front of me. And if the race would have just stayed green, he would have had to have made his pit stop. And I would have gone on and ran the laps and not even, I'm still saving fuel, not even have to run hard at the end of the race, and we were going to win it. The strategy was perfect. The team did a perfect job with the pit stops, everything. But right at that time, there was a yellow that came out, and Emerson was actually on the north end of the track. And this is before they closed the pits. And so he ducks in and makes his final pit stop, and they do like a splash and go to him because there's only about 10 laps left in the race. And so he comes out of that pit stop, that final one, right in front of me, because I stayed out. I didn't need to pit. I had already made my last stop. And so he came out right in front of me, and I go, "Oh man, okay, now we have to race him." I'm going, now I got to race him. And he's in front of me. And so all I did was just look down, turn my knob right to where it was pre-marked, and we were ready to go. And the race, as soon as it went green, we were back in traffic a little bit. He got through the traffic a little bit, and then I got through, and I ran him down and passed him. And now I was leading the race, and with just, we were 2 laps from the end. We come onto the backstretch, and we had caught some lap traffic, and it had wrecked my momentum. And so Emerson pulls up next to me, and he actually has a run on me, right? And he's in a Penske, and so we pull out like that, and he comes up next to me, and now it's like a drag race down the backstretch, and there's lap cars on my right and Emerson on my left, and I actually started pulling ahead of him like that, and I went, "All right, my car's faster than his." I didn't really know it at the time, but and then we went into turn 3. Traffic was there. He touches me. I go up next to the wall. I hit the wall. He goes on to get the white flag because that's what we were coming around to do. Had that traffic not been there, all that kind of stuff. A lot of ifs in that whole scenario, but we touched, and he went on to win the race and so on.
So you hit the wall.
Yep.
You come down into the infield there, in between 3 and 4. And what is your mental state at that point?
My mental state is he just took me out, kind of thing. And no, I got out of the car and took my helmet off, and it's under yellow, of course, and I know this and all that kind of thing. And I got my helmet off, and I knew he was coming back around, And, and so I started to head out to the track, and one of the safety crews stepped right in front of me. And he says, "Where are you going?" I go, "I'm going out there." And he goes, it's so funny. He goes, "What, you want to flip him off?" And I went, "Yeah, like, duh." And he stepped aside. He goes, "Go right ahead." And I went, "Okay." He did. He didn't miss a beat. He go right ahead. And so I got out there, and which was only a few seconds, but it felt like a long time for me. All of a sudden, I had all these thoughts running through me. I'm at the Indy 500. Emerson Fittipaldi is coming around for his first victory. You know, Emerson is actually at that time a really good friend of mine, and he's actually the godfather to my second daughter, Shannon. Okay, Emerson was the one that saved Nicky Lauda's life over in Formula One when he pulled him out of his burning car. Emerson is the last person that would intentionally hurt anyone, okay, especially another driver in competition. And and then, there's these thoughts of when I was go-kart racing, and my dad and we were watching this race. This kid spun off. He got out of his go-kart and took his helmet off and slammed it in the seat. My dad looked at me and goes, "If I ever see you do that, you're done," And so all these thoughts came. It was like a moment of clarity that just all of this came and hit me. And basically it was Emerson coming around for his first Indy 500, which we all wanted. And so I ended up just being the first one to congratulate him. And I gave him a thumbs up and congratulated him. So I don't, I, I honestly don't know why, because my intention was to go out, be angry, but, God had other plans for me. I've talked about it in my church group, and I had one of my good friends say that was the Spirit talking to you, so on. And must have been.
I've heard different drivers say that to win the Indy 500, you got to be more lucky than good.
Absolutely.
And yeah. And
absolutely.
You had an interesting comment in the green room that I really enjoyed hearing, but who picks the winner of that race?
God totally picks the winner of that race. I learned that basically the first time I saw it, it was in the 85 race, and I'm in the race, and Danny Sullivan, who ended up winning the 500 that year, him and I came up in Can-Ams, and so we kind of had the same path the last earlier years coming up into the Indy 500. And honestly, Danny Sullivan wasn't one of my favorite people, and so we used to call him Hollywood, okay, because he loved to entertain and that kind of stuff, and finding out how he actually prepared in racing and so on was something that was completely different than the way I prepared to go racing and that sort of thing. And so during that race, it was one of the years that I didn't have a fast enough car to compete for the win and that sort of thing. And so when actually Danny Sullivan spun out in front of Mario, I was already out of the race. I had just fallen out of the race, and I was watching it on TV in, I believe it was actually in either the Goodyear room or the lunchroom that was under Tower Terrace, the old Tower Terrace there.
Right.
And they had the monitors because, we didn't have them in our motorhomes or anything like that at that time. It was only and not even in the garages. It was only under those terraces. And so I actually watched it. I was still in my racing uniform, and I watched him spin and not hit anything and caused his own yellow. He needed a yellow. He caused his own yellow. And I'm looking at that and I'm going, this is unbelievable. This is just, that does not happen at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway where you spin and you don't hit anything.
Right.
And all he did was lost one position because he went for the lead. He spins, Mario passes him, and then he comes up down the backstretch,
Right.
right behind Mario. So it only cost him a spot, and so, but he went on to win that race. And I knew right then that, God decides who wins this race. Always has, always will. So
Let's go now to 1994. Your teammates with Emerson Fittipaldi.
yep.
And he has that race pretty much in hand.
He does. Yeah.
So what happened there? Can you kind of walk us through that?
Sure. In 94, actually I can start earlier than that. Qualifying for the 500, we had that trick engine that Roger built, and it was the Mercedes 209. We were only racing our teammates. We were only racing between us, and so Roger would barely let any of us even practice because he was worried that if we did go too quick, that the officials would lower the power on the engine and so on. And so Roger really limited our practice. Emerson, he really did a great job that whole month. He started timing himself on coming off of turn 2 and back to turn 2. And so the number that he would actually put up in front of the people was a low number. So he stayed like probably, what was it, 5th or 6th or 7th quick during all the practice sessions, where myself, I was just warming up and I was like P1. And so, Roger would go, okay, you're done for the day. You're done. Go back to the garage. You're done. And so Emerson did a really great job. He was the quickest one of between him, Paul Tracy, and myself. Paul ended up, before qualifying, Paul crashed on Friday, and they wouldn't clear him to run on Saturday. Really upset Roger. Roger had the front row one time before that, and that was 1988. He had Rick Mears, my dad, and I believe it was Sullivan
I think so.
in 1988.
Right.
Yep. So that was the first time Roger had the front row locked up in his career, and so on. And so he wanted that really bad again. We come back with this trick engine, and we're set to be on the front row. Roger even talked about, I want that front row so bad. And so Paul crashes on Friday. He was upset. I mean, Paul was in trouble. Roger was upset. Paul was in trouble. And so Saturday, it's a calm day. It's a bit overcast. And Emerson had picked a late number. I had picked an early number with the pills, with the qualifying order. I go out and run, overcast, great conditions, no wind, and same way with Raul Bosell, who ended up qualifying second. But before Emerson could run, it rained. Okay. And so Emerson didn't get to go out and qualify until Sunday, the next day. That day is hot and windy. And so Emerson, what he was running, he couldn't come close to what Bosell and I had done on the Saturday before. And so Emerson ended up qualifying third quick. And I mean, right, it's God. God is in control of this whole thing. So I sit on my one and only pole position that I ever had at the Speedway. And as a matter of fact, Norma likes to talk about the pole van, okay? Which at that time, they gave whoever won the pole, they gave them a StarCraft custom van, which we have in the museum out at Lincoln. Norma's trying to get her hands on it, but I won't let her. And so during that day, basically, we started the race. We led. Emerson couldn't pass me because we were just so equal. We were so quick down the straightaways and so on. And actually, I come in on my very first pit stop and I stalled it when I went to leave. It is today the only time I ever stalled a race car at the Indy 500 during the race, and it was that day. Emerson passed me. He was gone. I was searching for Emerson for the rest of the day. He was in a world by himself. He pulled away from me. We couldn't run with him at all, and so ended up that at the end of the race, I had made my final stop. Emerson needs to make his final stop, and he's right behind me. So basically, I'm running second. He's leading the race, and his crew kept telling him that he had to pass me in order to make his pit stop and come out in front of me. Because it takes about a lap of the speed running to make your final pit stop and so on. And so we got caught in traffic. He was able to get by me. We came on some more traffic. I was able to get by him. And then, so we're in open air, and his crew, and I didn't know this at the time, but his crew was telling him that he had to pass me. He had to pass me. Not realizing, I don't know why they were doing that, because he was a full lap ahead of me. Just by being behind me, he didn't need to pass me. He was already that full lap right there. So anyway, he makes a mistake in turn 4 and slides the car and hits the wall, and trying to pass me. And as a matter of fact, I came off turn 4 and I saw it in my mirror that he went up and hit it really hard, and I went, yes. Because he was my only competition all day, and I go, yes, and so knowing that all we needed to do was finish at that time, which there was only a handful of laps left in the race, and so on, and so yeah, we win the race, and as a matter of fact, Dad is there. Dad was actually had retired during practice of the '94 race. He got out of the car, and so he was actually in my pits and so on, and as a matter of fact, he rode in the pace car with me and my family as we went around the track. At the end of the race, we came around turn 4, and I showed him. I said, "That's where Emerson hit." And his first response, his only response, he came back. He says, "It comes back to you at this place. It comes back to you," and that's what it was. It came back to me. The '89 race came back to me in '94.
What was it like pulling into victory lane and seeing your dad?
It was just super special. I mean, it was really in '92 when we won it the first time. We're in the pace car and we're getting ready to pull out of the pits, and we're going down the pit road. And Dad was in that race in '92. He finished third. Okay. And the pace car, he came out and got in front of the pace car with a jacket on because it was so cold that day.
Right.
Right. And his arms were just so big, to give me a hug and so on. And that's really the memory I remember of Dad with that sort of thing. And he never went to any of the Victory Lane stuff with me. And I don't know, I guess he had been there before, done that kind of thing, but that's the way it was with me too. As a kid, I had an opportunity in 1978 to come back with my sisters. It was planned. We were going to come back to the 500 and with Mary Linda and Debbie and myself. And during the first part of the month of May, when Dad left for the month of May, I was staying at one of his friends' house. I decided to play hooky from school because I'm a sophomore in high school. So I played hooky for a week of the 1st of May. I got caught. I got grounded. Okay. And so part of that grounding is I didn't come back for the month of May at Indy in 1978. My sisters got to go, but I didn't. And Dad ends up winning the race. And so they get to go to Victory Lane because in 70 and 71, we were too young. We weren't allowed at the 500 back then at that time. And so in 78, my sisters got to go to Victory Lane. And then what's really super special is Monday morning, the next day, with all the photographs and all the pictures taken with the Borg Warner and your car out on the track. And it's just a wall of cameras in front of you and that sort of thing. And so they got to live all that. I didn't. Okay. And honestly, I got to say that I'm super thankful that Dad did win that year, because when he came back to Albuquerque, he actually came to my school and he said, I don't know if I should kick you or hug you, And so I go, well, hug me. That's what I want. So I was super lucky he won that race that day, because things would have been a lot different once he got home.
Well, how about 87? Did you go when your dad won in 87? Did you get to go to Victory?
No, 87. I think I finished 4th or 5th that day. And no, he won the race and that sort of thing. And so, I was in the race, so I got beat that day. I have no reason to go in 87. And then it was funny because it kind of was a reminder in 1989 when I'm in the infield hospital and Emerson's in Victory Lane, and Dad comes to the infield hospital and he, first off, are you okay? I go, yeah, I'm okay. He goes, his first words were, you can win this. And I look at him and I go, what? And he goes, he was below the white line when he passed you. He was below, and Tom Binford, the chief steward at the time, had made a big deal out of not going below the white line to make a pass during the 500, because actually, I think it was probably the first year that they had actually taken the apron and widened it and made it part of the racing surface. And so Tom was saying, you cannot go below the white line in order to make a pass in the corners. And that's what my dad was all about. Okay. He goes, he was under the white line. You can win this. You can protest this. And I looked at Dad and I go, Dad, he's the one drinking the milk right now. Not me. I want to drink the milk, And he goes, well, you can win this. You should take it. And he tried to talk Rick Gallows into protesting and all that. Rick even asked me, I go, no, Rick, that's, we'll get it right one of these days.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a drinking the milk. And the guy's now in Victory Lane, and I think Dan Weldon 05 was the first to do this, pouring the milk on him.
Yeah.
Are you a drink strictly and pass it around, or do you like the pouring the milk on you?
when the first time I saw that happen, I went, he's got to go do press conference and all this afterwards. He's going to smell really good, and it's going to be all sticky and, just yuck. The first time I saw that happen, no, 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 no. And in the times that I won it, the crew, they deserve to drink that milk as much as I do. And so it gets passed around in Victor Lane there.
That's what a lot of people, okay, Al Unser Jr. is a two-time Indianapolis 500 winner. But without your team, and you were so good talking about Gallus and how your car was set up and how they had you dialed in. Without that teamwork, you're nothing.
Absolutely. The team is everything, honest to God. Owen Snyder was my crew chief with the Valvoline cars. Richard Buck was my crew chief with the Marlboro cars. I simply just say to people, I am the final nut that the crew chief puts in that car to make it go. And that's it. I am just a piece of material that just is part of the team and so on. And, when Gallus, he was the one, he's from Albuquerque. He brought me to Indy. It was really Rick Gallus who really started my career and all that kind of stuff. And he had a dream of winning the 500 himself, as a car owner. And so, we basically built that team in 1981 was the first time we were together, and we ran Super Vs, which would be equivalent to today's mini Indy car and the Indy Lights. And then we went to Can-Am in 1982, and it was basically because my dad was saying that we needed one more year because Rick wanted to go IndyCar racing in 1982. And it was really my dad who talked him out of going, because in kart during the rest of the year, the minimum age of driving was 18 years old. And I was 20 at the time in 1982. And so we could run in the kart IndyCar races, but at Indy, it was USAC sanctioned and it was 21. And so we couldn't come back to Indy in 1982 because I was too young to drive. But we could go IndyCar racing, and Dad goes, you're building this team. Let's, you need another year. Choose the Can-Am car. Al can do some more road racing. They do pit stops in Can-Am. He needs to practice pit stops and get your team really ready before you go into IndyCar. And Rick said, okay, we'll spend another year. And so we really built that team from scratch. And I had gone away from the team in 1985, 86, and 87 and drove for Domino's Pizza. Doug Shearson was the car owner. But once I was away from Rick Gallus, and he stayed racing because it was his dream to win the Indy 500 and so on. And so I missed Rick. I missed the team being in Albuquerque, all that kind of stuff. And so once my contract was done with Shearson, I came back to Rick in 1988, and the rest is history.
Well, here we are now. Obviously, Roger Penske owns not only the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but the IndyCar Series. As an outsider now, but with your skills and your history, how do you look at the health of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the IndyCar Series as a whole? How do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think Roger is the man that can enhance IndyCar racing as a whole, and also IMS, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Roger loves that place more than any man I know. I mean, he definitely knows what Indy means. Okay. And it's his heartbeat. It's everything to him. And so You know, he's the one, okay, if you kind of look at it, and I noticed this several years ago, okay, his IndyCar team is powered by Chevrolet. His NASCAR team are Fords, okay? He has a party and he's got the top executives of Ford and he's got the top executives of Chevy, and they're all getting along. Everybody's getting along, and only Roger Penske can make this happen.
Right.
And so, you know, his IMSA team is powered by Porsche, and they're all Team Penske. And so, I think he had a get together of 50 years of Team Penske or a few years ago, and he had all these top executives in the same room, and only Roger can do that. And so as far as the future going forward, you know, he's so smart, and his family, you know, Greg Penske. Greg is a spitting image of Roger, totally. Sounds like him. I've had meetings with him. It's a miniature Roger sitting in front of me, honest to God, sharp as heck, and so on. And so, as far as the future of IndyCar and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Penske family it's in great hands. It's in great hands for years and years to come. So,
Good.
yeah.
Well, I think we may be at the point where we could take, if there are questions from you here in the audience. I know there's folks watching on Zoom, and they have a box there where you can ask a question there. So if you have a thought or a question for Al.
Yep, there's one right there.
Right there, okay. I think Barb is getting a microphone, and they're going to be coming around, and she'll hunt you down here.
Thank you. You and I are contemporaries. We were both born in 1962.
Nine.
Your passion is palpable, and I hope that you understand how many people are absolutely in love with you and your family and your heritage. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
I have what I hope will be two things that will reflect upon things that you said earlier in the evening. Pardon me. The first being, when I was a young man, I had the great good fortune of attending one of Mom Unser's chili.
Awesome.
So I'd like for you, first of all, if you could reflect on your memories of Mom Unser chilies. But then the second thing that I would like to talk about, because you also reflected upon this earlier, is if you could introduce us to your walk with Christ.
Oh, okay. First off, I'll start with Grandma's chili. It was too hot for me to eat. Simply put, as I tried, even as an adult, and no, it's too hot. Okay, those green chilies from Hatch are dynamite. Okay, and so Grandma's chili always needed to be detuned for me to eat it, and yeah, my journey with Christ, it actually all started when I moved. I was born and raised in Albuquerque, lived in Albuquerque basically my whole life. In 2017, I got a job offering back here in Indy. My mom has lived here in Indianapolis since the late 80s, okay? And so she married a great man, Mike Devon, who was actually the chief steward in 1994 of USAC. And he tells me he never would have lowered the boost on that 209 cubic gas. So everything Roger was all worried about, my stepdad was in full control of the situation. Okay. So there's that. But coming back and I actually live about a mile away from my mom right now, and as a matter of fact, tonight's event, we go to church on Thursday night. And so I had to tell her yesterday that I wasn't going to be able to take her to church tonight because I was going to be doing this. And so when I came back here, I was the good son that took my mom to church. I had no intention of doing anything other than taking my mom to church and so on. And so eventually, after 8 to 10 months of taking my mom to church, I went, I haven't actually tried giving my life to Jesus. And it's something that I looked around. It seems to be working for an awful lot of people, and especially in church. And so I made a commitment right there in church. It was funny to be a follower of Christ. The second I did that, I felt something warm inside me instantly. It happened instantly. Within few months, I was baptized and so on, and totally since the day that I've done that, my life has totally changed. It's totally, God is full on in control of everything, and it's my duty to get up and go out and be the best I can be and try the best that I can do that day. Some days it works out really, really well. Some days it just doesn't go where the heck, okay? No matter what I do, it's not the right thing to do. But at the end of the day, it's God's will. And so because of this, I'm married to a beautiful young lady that's a follower of Christ also, and so on. And so my life has totally gotten better, and it's something that I wished I could honestly, my mom and I have talked about it. I wished I could pass it to my kids, and but God's timing, it's not right yet. And my mom even looked at me. She goes, "Yeah, I've been wanting this for you for so long, and it finally came." But she wished I had done it a lot sooner than I actually did it. And so, but yeah, I truly just take one day at a time and give my life to Jesus, and everything that has come across as I look back now, it's all been God's will and so on. So.
Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else?
Barb?
Right down front here. All right. Right down front here.
Here, the microphone's back there, Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll get next.
Yeah, we'll get
Sorry.
next.
Here we go.
You seem to have a thing for Canadians. You mentioned his name, Paul Tracy.
Yeah.
How was he as a competitor, and then in having him as a teammate at Penske? How was that relationship?
Ooh. As a person, actually, Paul is a good guy. Okay, away from the racetrack and all that kind of thing. We've done stuff together, and he really is a nice guy and a pleasurable guy to be around. At the racetrack, it's a totally different story, and so I'll just leave it at that. Just leave it at
All right.
I believe you tested a Williams Formula One car,
I did.
and I just want to know if you could tell us about that experience and how close you were to going to F1, if that was ever a possibility.
Yeah, he asked about me testing the F1 Williams car. I did test with Williams. It was at Portugal. It was a 5-day test, and I drove all 5 days. It was something that Damon Hill was actually the test driver at that time. Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese were the full-time drivers. Nigel was not at that test at all, but Riccardo Patrese was. It was the year that they were introducing the full computerized car. In 1993, the car that they ran was computer controlled with the ride heights. And so what that enabled the car to do was be at optimum ride height no matter how fast it was going. And so with the ground effects going on underneath the car, the ride height is super critical to get maximum downforce. Okay, so when a car is running 180 miles an hour, it produces a lot of downforce and a lot of suction to the track. And so when it's running 60 miles an hour, in order to keep it out of the ground at 180, then it's got to be raised up, or they've got to put what we call packers in the shocks and so on. And so it's never actually at its optimum ride height with just mechanical springs and shocks and that sort of thing. And so with the electronic car, it kept it there hydraulically with the optimum ride height. That car was like a second and a half quicker than their 92 car, which is the one that I was actually driving. And so I was there. It was a great test. I loved it. Learned a lot about actually what I learned about the car. It was the only race car that I had driven that had paddle shifts. And so by the time I retired was before they had paddle shifts in IndyCar. Okay, so I never drove an IndyCar with paddle shifts. It was the only car I did drive was the F1 car. The shifting at that time was brand new to the electronic shifting. So every time you're holding it wide open and you go from second to third, you just pull that handle. The cut was so big that it'd throw my head forward and then it'd throw it back like that. It was rough. Okay. It was a bad time. And so one of the things I was, I guess, a little too honest or naive because Patrick Head, the head designer of the car, first time I got in it and shifted it, he said, "How'd it shift?" I said, "It sucks." It's really bad. I said, "My Galmer shifts better than this thing."
Oh.
And yeah, because my Galmer didn't throw my head forward and throw it back. And so anyway, he goes, "That thing shifts faster than, it shifts in milliseconds." And I go, "Well, it's throwing my head forward and throwing it back," and so on. And so they actually had the cut too big. They had the cut too long. Yes, it shifted really quick, but their cut in the engine was just too big. And so I think I gave up my opportunity to go F1 at that time. Frank Williams said that he was interested in me when I got done with the test, and I go back to England with them, and I said, "Well, I want to be your driver," and so on. He goes, "We're just interested in you," and it was Patrick Head who politely showed me the door. Okay. I don't think he could get me out of there quick enough. And, but there was years before that and after where I had opportunities to drive for other teams. They ended up putting contracts in front of me that was way less than I was making already over in IndyCar racing. I think the only real opportunity that I had to go F1 happened in 1985. At the end of the year in 1985, I had just lost the championship to my dad by 1 point in 85. And I had Bernie Ecclestone call me up at home. And it was funny because my mom was actually my secretary at the time. And my mom comes out and she says, "Al, there's Bernie Ecclestone on the phone for you." And I go, "Who?" And Bernie Ecclestone. And I go, "How would he have my number?" there's no way that Bernie Ecclestone has my number. And so I get on the phone and he goes, Al, this is Bernie. And I go, yeah, okay, great honor for you to be calling my house, and he goes, well, I'm wanting to, he owned the Brabham F1 team at the time. And he just simply said, Al, I want you to be my second driver. Nelson PK is my first driver. I want you to be my second driver. Here's what I'll pay you, which is about 5 or 6 times more than I was making at the time. And I want you to come, get on an airplane and come and be a done deal. And I said, thanks very much, Bernie, but my heart is at the Indy 500. I want to do well there, which means win the Indy 500 before I go do anything else. Thank you for the phone call, but I have to say no. And that was my only time that I was offered a serious offer in F1, and I passed it up. Look, in hindsight, I saw Emerson Fittipaldi, Nigel Mansell. Mario's been in America. He's been at the Indy 500 forever, right? But these two guys, they had success in F1, and then they came and they had success in IndyCar. And maybe that would have been the right thing to do, but, my heart was at Indy, and that's what I wanted to do, and so that's what we did.
Line.
Okay?
From a question from Lauren in our Zoom audience. What was the best thing your Uncle Bobby taught you?
The best thing that my Uncle Bobby taught me. I gotta think about that one. Wow. Uncle Bobby taught me an awful lot. I mean, no, it was all good stuff. I mean, I think I learned more from Uncle Bobby snowmobiling and hunting and stuff like that than I actually did at the racetrack. Uncle Bobby was pretty hard on me at the racetrack, because when his last full season was 1981. And so he didn't compete in 82, and so he was retired. And so by the time I get to IndyCar racing in 83, he's full on retired. He's in the TV booth. And I just remember more times than anything that Uncle Bobby, there was one time that we're down at Tamiami. It's the final race of the season. It's Miami, Florida. Final IndyCar race this season. I qualified something like 23rd or 24th, which was almost dead last, right? And so I'm down on the grid just before we're to get in the cars. Uncle Bobby comes up to me and he goes, just take today as a learning day, okay? You're way in the back, so just be careful at the beginning or during the race. Don't get taken out, and just treat it as a learning day, because there's no way you're winning this race today. And I go, I agree with you. I'm going to do everything. And so Roberto Guerrero ran out of fuel on the last lap, and I won the race that day. And so that's Uncle Bobby.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have another question down here.
And I think this should be our last question to keep to our
Okay.
time.
Okay.
With Long Beach is coming up with the 50th anniversary, and I'd like you to talk about, your experience there. Obviously, we know how successful that was, but what are some of your memorable experiences from that historic race too?
Yeah, Long Beach, it's the next IndyCar race, and it is their 50th anniversary. I'm actually very honored to be co-Grand Marshal for the event, which Brian Redmond, Mario Andretti, and myself were the grand marshals for, excuse me, for this year's event. And I'm honored to be in such great company, you know, with those guys. Long Beach was one of those tracks for me. I had a lot of great times there. Okay, so anytime you go to a racetrack and you win and you win and you win, you have great times. Okay, so it's all good. And so yeah, once we really kind of figured out how to get around Long Beach, it was something that again, a God thing. I was able to do stuff there that it just seemed like no matter what year it was, once 88 came around, no matter what we did to the car, it made it go faster. And so it was just one of those tracks that I would say that the ball would bounce my way, you know, kind of thing. And so we had really good luck there. A lot of stories, you know, racing Mario and that sort of thing, and racing Dad. It was great racing him there, and that and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, it was just one of those places that we went to. I honestly, and I can say it with this room, I wished that had been a month later, because the month later is the month of May. And so that good fortune that I had in April of every year, I honestly wished it was a month later, but it's not, you know. My birthday is April 19th, and so the Long Beach Grand Prix always kind of fell around my birthday, and so, you know, maybe that's some of the good fortune there, and so on. But we always enjoyed going there and racing there, and truly enjoyed it. Yeah, and so
Yeah.
we're looking forward to going back. You know, Norm and I are leaving next Wednesday to go back there. So
The king of the beach, they called him, 6.
thank you. What? Yes. Long Beach, actually, in 1984, Norma's bringing this up. She tried to get me the other day on April 1st, and she did. Okay. So 1984, Sunday, race day was April 1st, was the April Fool's Day. And my first wife, Shelley, she said, "You've got to do something to the crew. You got to do something to the crew." And I go, "No, it's race day. You know, this is serious. We can't, you know." She goes, "Oh, come on. It's April Fool's Day. You got to do something to the crew and everybody." And I go, "Okay, well, I'll think about it, whatever." And so we went out. I didn't do anything with anybody during the morning warm up or morning routine. So we're out there. We're on the parade laps, and I get this wild idea to do an April Fool's joke on the team. And so on the second parade lap, going down the backstretch, I start breathing really, really hard. And then I push the button and I go, "No oil pressure, no oil pressure." And let the button go. Total silence. I mean, crickets, right? Total silence. I don't say another word. I go, it's about, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds later, I get on the hairpin that comes out onto the front straightaway, and I push the button, "April Fools." I guess Rick Gallis, when I said no oil pressure, no oil pressure, I guess he took his radios off and threw them on the ground and busted them, right? The whole crew just went into just a panic. "Oh my God, no." And then I pull around there and I go, "April Fools." Yeah. I, at the end of the race, okay, so during the race, we ended up having a mechanical about 2/3 of the way through. We had a valve spring break on the car and I dropped a valve during the race. So we didn't finish. So as soon as we get back to the truck or trailer, what have you, and Rick gets me by himself, he goes, "Don't you ever do it." Okay. So later on, I told my dad, like either later on that day or when we got back to Albuquerque, I told my dad and he goes, "You should have been fired on the spot." Yeah, I guess I should have.
Yeah.
So I never did that to a team ever again. Okay, never did that.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Unser Jr.
Thank you.
Great job, Al. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.